Brooke Logan had always been a woman of indomitable spirit, fearless in business, relentless in love, and resilient in every storm life hurled at her. But when a rare, degenerative muscular disease stealthily crept into her life, draining her strength and dimming her brilliant smile, even Brooke felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Doctors, astonished by the speed of her decline, offered little more than palliative care. Hope seemed to fracture into 1,000 jagged pieces. Yet amid that darkness appeared a single, glimmering shard of possibility, an experimental stem cell therapy, still unapproved by the FDA, whispered of restoration and renewed vitality. It was Brooke's last chance. Enter Dr. Taylor Hayes, the world-renowned neurosurgeon whose skill with the scalpel was matched only by her steely resolve and unshakable principles. Taylor had ascended the pinnacles of medical achievement, earning accolades for pioneering procedures that defied conventional limits. When she heard of Brooke's plight, she felt the familiar tug of her Hippocratic oath, an obligation to heal, to give every patient the gift of life. Yet Taylor was also a woman of boundaries. She knew the perilous line between medical breakthrough and reckless experimentation. She understood that by performing this untested therapy, she would expose both herself and her patient to the wrath of regulatory authorities, risking her license, her reputation, and everything she had built. And so Taylor set terms as exacting as her surgical technique. She would only undertake the operation if Brooke Logan signed a binding agreement to relinquish once and for all any claim on Ridge Forrester's heart. No more clandestine affairs, no more whispered midnight rendezvous. If Brooke wanted her life saved, she must legally and irrevocably free Ridge from her influence. This brutal stipulation transformed a medical procedure into a battlefield of wills. For Brooke, it was unthinkable. To bar herself from Ridge's life felt like embracing death. Ridge had been her anchor, her fiercest passion, the man whose very essence was intertwined with hers through decades of tumultuous love and endless separation. To surrender him was to consign her soul to loneliness. Yet with every muscle fiber deteriorating, with every breath an act of defiance against her own failing body, Brooke was caught between love and survival. The fine print of Taylor's contract became as vital as any surgical instrument, each clause a cold reminder that life and love were locked in mortal combat. Brooke's attorneys quibbled over language, Brooke Logan thundered threats, and Ridge himself stood paralyzed at the precipice of choice, torn between pleading for Brooke's life and shielding his own heart from further betrayal. Taylor, seated behind her pristine mahogany desk, watched the chaos she had orchestrated with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. She believed in the purity of her demand. If Ridge still claimed Brooke's name in his heart after she had been repudiated in writing, then perhaps he should bear the weight of his desires, unswayed by legal bonds. Yet, as she reviewed Brooke's quivering signature line, she felt an unexpected pang of conscience. Her pursuit of scientific progress had turned human relationships into commodities to be traded for medical miracles. In her mind, the image of Ridge's anguished face haunted her sterile operating room, where the stench of antiseptic mingled with the scent of moral ambiguity. Could she truly consecrate her career on the altar of a heartbroken man's dignity? Or would she yield to the fundamental calling that first drove her to medicine, to heal without prejudice, to save without conditions? Ridge Forrester, caught between two formidable women, found himself ensnared in the fiercest struggle of his life. Throughout his journey, he had loved Brooke with a passion that bordered on desperation, yet he had also forged a bond with Taylor, rooted in respect and shared commitment to higher principles. Now, standing in Brooke's plush hospital suite, he watched her gaunt form curled beneath designer sheets, her eyes flickering with a blend of fear and defiance. He felt the full weight of Taylor's contract like a guillotine poised above his hopes. If Brooke lived, she would sever her own heart from his. If she died, he would carry her absence forever. His mind raced through memories, Brooke's laughter echoing through Forrester Creations' hallways, their stolen embraces in moonlit gardens, the endless cycles of separation and reunion that had defined their saga. Could his love survive this final betrayal? Or was he destined to stand alone, haunted by the knowledge that he had chosen passion over duty, love over reason? As the day of surgery approached, tension coiled through the Forrester mansion like a nervous serpent. Ridge confronted Taylor in her high-tech clinic, his voice a blend of desperation and authority. He pleaded for mercy, but also demanded integrity. "You're a healer," he reminded her, "not a judge. Have you no compassion for what this woman has been through? For what we all have been through?" Taylor, her white coat crisp and her posture resolute, replied that she would not be swayed by emotion, only by the certainty that her patient's life demanded this sacrifice. Yet beneath her clinical tone, Ridge detected a flicker of doubt. He seized that moment, offering to accompany Taylor through every legal battle, to stand as a bulwark against the FDA's wrath, to share every risk and consequence so that Brooke's name would never be dragged through the snow. His proposal struck a chord deep within Taylor's conscience. Here was a man willing to sacrifice everything for love, extending the same pledge of protection that doctors vow to their patients. In the silent corridors of the hospital, while Brooke lay between life and death, something extraordinary transpired. Taylor, moved by Ridge's unwavering devotion, made a choice that would redefine her career and reshape the fates of all three hearts entwined. She tore the contract into shreds, her gloved hands trembling. "I will operate," she whispered, "without conditions." In that instant, the sterile world of medical protocols collided with the raw, untamed realm of human emotion. As the surgical team prepared the operating theater, Brooke's fragile form was wheeled into the light, and Taylor's scalpel became an instrument of unconditional mercy. Ridge stood waiting outside the doors, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. He would soon learn whether the miracle he fought for could truly defy both biology and bureaucracy. When at last the doors swung open, Brooke's eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes alight with both pain and relief. Taylor emerged, her face streaked with fatigue and triumph, and delivered the news that seemed impossible only hours before. The procedure had been a success. Brooke's muscles, once ravaged by disease, began the slow ascent toward regeneration. Her prognosis, once bleak, was now infused with cautious optimism. Ridge stepped forward, gathering Brooke into his arms as Taylor looked on, her professional detachment forever altered by the day's events. In that embrace, every contract, every threat, every tear shed in isolation was rendered moot by the sheer force of compassion. Love had triumphed not through legal decree, but through the brave choice to heal without condition. Yet even as joy radiated through the Forrester clinic, the trio understood that their journey was far from over. Brooke would endure months of rehabilitation, battling not only the lingering effects of her disease, but also the shadows of doubt that lingered in moments of weakness. Taylor would face inquiries, her medical license scrutinized, and she would wage a public fight to legitimize the therapy she had administered in faith rather than fear. Ridge would stand between them once more, this time as both supporter and defender, determined to ensure that Brooke's second chance at life would be free of the barriers that had nearly cost her everything. In the crucible of the most trying decision of their lives, they had discovered a truth older than any court, that love, when guided by integrity and sacrifice, can heal the deepest wounds of body and soul. And so, as the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in hues of promise and renewal, Brooke, Taylor, and Ridge embarked on a shared path where medicine and emotion, science and spirit, converged in the most daring act of all, the choice to live, to love, and to believe that some miracles, forged in the fires of desperate hope, could indeed transform fate itself. A chance DNA test, ordered by Bill Spencer himself to quell lingering doubts about his youngest son's parentage, exploded the life of Spencer Publications into chaos. What began as a routine confirmation turned into a bombshell revelation. Wyatt is not Bill's biological heir, but the product of a fleeting affair between Quinn Fuller and the now-deceased Dr. Grant Warren, a man whose untimely passing left behind a staggering inheritance. When the lab results emerged, the sterile hush of Bill's private study shattered under the weight of betrayal and disbelief. Bill, who had raised Wyatt from infancy, nurtured him as the rightful scion of his media empire, was confronted with the truth that pounded at him like thunder. The boy he loved as his flesh and blood belonged to another man's legacy. The discovery rippled through the corridors of power at Spencer Publications, igniting whispers in every corner and leaving Bill grappling with a chasm of loss deeper than any corporate takeover he had ever weathered. He faced not only the erosion of his paternal identity, but the potential unraveling of his empire, with everyone from board members to advertisers questioning whether his lineage could sustain the name Spencer. Quinn Fuller, whose life had threaded through the tangled passions of Forrester Creations and Spencer Publications alike, resurfaced like a storm on the horizon, her motives as calculating as they were opportunistic. With Dr. Warren's will granting her sole executrix over his vast estate, Quinn asserted control over assets far exceeding even Bill's robust holdings. Seizing the moment of Wyatt's heartbreak and anger, she whispered promises of justice and restitution. "Sign the papers, Wyatt, and claim what is rightfully yours, 50% of Spencer Publications, the empire that Bill Spencer built on the back of a son who was not his own." With that proposition, she sowed the seeds of a legal crusade that threatened to cleave the Spencer brothers at their core. In boardrooms and law offices, the rumble of litigation began to grow. Quinn's rhetoric painted Bill as a man who had parented another's child without rightful claim, a schemer who would be undone by the very blood that once guaranteed his legacy. And Wyatt, wrestling with his sense of identity, found himself at the epicenter of a moral earthquake, torn between the loyalty and love he felt for the man who raised him and the cold, factual proof of his genetic heritage. Across the Spencer world, Liam, Bill's elder son, Wyatt's brother in every way except biology, watched the unfolding drama with mounting dread. He saw his father retreat behind closed doors, his usual ironclad confidence eroded by grief and fear. Bill, once untouchable in boardroom showdowns, began to hesitate under Liam's probing questions. What if Wyatt wins half the company? What if his own son walks away with the family fortune? As Liam paced the halls, determined to shield his brothership from collapse, he realized that no amount of legal maneuvering could heal the rift opening between them. On one side stood Wyatt, embittered by the revelation and urged on by Quinn's relentless ambition. On the other stood Bill, fighting not just to keep his company intact but to salvage the paternal bond he believed should transcend biology. Liam's heart broke as he witnessed intimate family photo albums hauled into court filings as proof of Bill's long-standing role as Wyatt's father, only to be countered by Quinn's impeccable documentation from Dr. Warren's side. The adversarial dance took on a new edge of cruelty each day. Lawsuits were filed, cease and desist letters exchanged, and depositions conducted under the harsh glare of flashbulbs and gossip columns. Wyatt himself, once the proud heir apparent whose very presence at board meetings commanded respect, was crushed under the weight of conflicting loyalties. In private moments, he confronted Quinn, demanding to know why she had concealed the affair and his true parentage for so long. She defended her silence with icy pragmatism. The affair was brief and unsanctioned. She protected Wyatt from scandal until the moment her leverage tipped in her favor. Yet in his anguish, Wyatt turned to Bill, seeking reassurance that the love and guidance he received over the years were not nullified by a test tube. Bill, with tears coursing down his face in a rare display of vulnerability, vowed that fatherhood was defined by more than DNA, that every sleepless night, every hard-won lesson, and every act of sacrifice had forged their bond beyond any genetic tie. But the courtroom offered little room for sentimentality. Judges and juries weighed contracts, inheritance laws, and corporate bylaws. Stock prices of Spencer publications wavered as investors sensed instability. Meanwhile, Quinn, emboldened by her legal gambit and the specter of Dr. Warren's fortune, tightened her grip on Wyatt's resolve, even as she underestimated the loyalty he still felt for the man who raised him. As the trial loomed, the air in Los Angeles crackled with anticipation. The public, ever hungry for high-stakes drama, followed every twist, from the revelation of Quinn's inheritance to the leaked lab reports and the sight of Wyatt, standing side by side with his mother, demanding his birthright. Bill, once the unassailable titan of media, faced testimony from caregivers, accountants, and even fashion insiders testifying to Wyatt's role as the company's rising creative executive. Liam, torn between legal strategy meetings and late-night heart-to-heart talks with Wyatt, struggled to maintain peace between them. In quiet moments, the brothers shared memories of childhood pranks, baseball games, and the day Wyatt had first called Bill Dad. Could those recollections withstand the cold logic of courts and contracts? Could love truly supersede law? Bill, battling to keep his company whole, worried that even a narrow loss would fracture not just his finances, but his family forever. Quinn, certain of victory, prepared her closing arguments, convinced that the law, like the heart, must honor blood above bond. And Wyatt, on the brink of a decision that would define his life, grappled with two truths: the man who gave him a name and a future, and the man whose genes ran through his veins. In the final act, with the courtroom packed and headlines screaming Spencer Dynasty at stake, Wyatt rose to speak. His voice wavered as he recounted the love and guidance Bill had given him, the lessons in integrity and the late-night conversations that shaped the man he'd become. He acknowledged his biological connection to Dr. Warren, but refused to view it as the sole definition of his identity. A father, Wyatt declared, is the one who stands by you in darkness and light, who believes in you when you have lost faith in yourself. Those words landed like a gavel strike, resonating in the hush that followed. Quinn, momentarily silenced, felt the foundations of her scheme tremble. Bill, seated with Liam by his side, allowed himself the first glimpse of hope in weeks. When the judge ultimately ruled that Wyatt could pursue an equitable share, but citing decades of proven parentage and partnership in the company, denied a forced sale of half Spencer publications, an uneasy peace settled over the Spencers. Wyatt retained his place at Bill's side, Quinn's legal triumph reduced to a fraction of her ambition, and Liam breathed a sigh of relief. Yet beneath the courtroom's calm surface, the aftershocks would continue to reverberate. Wyatt would carry the knowledge of his true lineage as a bittersweet heirloom. Bill would guard his empire with renewed vigilance, aware that legacy extends far beyond stock certificates, and Quinn, thwarted yet undeterred, would surely plot her next move in the endless game of love, power, and betrayal that defined the world of the bold and the beautiful. In the end, the trial had confirmed one immutable truth. In the tangled web of family and fortune, DNA may chart a beginning, but it is loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to choose love over law that truly define who we are and who we decide to be.